Heavenly Father, we thank you tonight. We thank you for keeping us safe, for keeping us warm. We thank you, Lord, for the many mercies that you give to us and the blessings. We're here tonight to be used by you, to be mouthpieces, Lord, for the kingdom of God and for, Lord, the sake of man and mankind. And so we serve a twofold purpose here tonight, and we thank you that we could be here and encourage each other to keep the fight up. And Lord, thank you for the many people here, the many that serve tirelessly, day after day after day, not wanting any kind of accolades or anything, just doing it because they know it's the right thing to do. And Lord, I know you can't help but bless that. And so I thank you. We ask you, Lord, to help those that are struggling, a little sick tonight, and just bring healing to their bodies. And we thank you, Lord, again, for our person here tonight that's going to speak, John Bear, and what he has to bring to us. Help us, Lord, to focus on everything that he says. And Lord, we thank you. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen, and amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting. How many of you were at the fundraiser Saturday at Camplex? Gee, just about everybody here. So, do you realize that makes you an insurgent? With that said, you have to understand, the founding fathers of this nation, they were all insurgents. But they were patriots after the war was over. Where does that put us? And where does that put Donald Trump? Is he an insurgent right now? Yeah, he is. But when he wins the election, he's going to be a patriot.
To us anyway.
Yeah, to us anyway. Yeah, we're making history right now. So that's something that I just wanted to point out is we may not be popular in a lot of people's eyes, but this is, I would like to believe, where God wants us, is on that side. I can't believe that he would want us on the other side. I just can't believe that. So with that said, I'm going to introduce our key speaker tonight. I want you to welcome John Bear, and he's going to give us some information about legislation. Here you go.
Thank you, Ron. Hey, thanks everybody for being here tonight. I'll try to give you as much information as I can and in a way that you can grasp it, but feel free to raise your hand at any time if I've confused you in any way. But we will also have some Q&A at the end, and you're going to keep me on time, right?
Keep you on time.
I'm not much of a public speaker, but once I get started, it's hard to get me stopped, right? So I've got a little presentation here, and we're going to talk about the budget tonight. So we have a budget session every other year, and then we create a budget that is a biennium, so it's supposed to cover 2 years. And this is the budget session. So when we had our session last time, that's called a general session, that's where we write laws for the most part. And that's a 40-day session, and this is a 20-day session. So this is really going to be rapid-fire legislation. We will spend about 1 week dealing with the 700 bills that, probably 400 of those will be in the House. So we'll deal with 400 bills in 7 days. And then we will deal with the budget for about 1 week. And the Senate will be dealing with the budget on their side during that same week. Once we've voted on our budget and passed it, there will be differences between the two sides because we worked on it at the same time, and then they'll go to reconcile that budget. I'll explain this a little bit further in just a moment. But a little bit about me. I am the representative for the eastern side of Gillette. It's called House District 31, and I've been in office since 2020, so this is my 3rd year. And so I represent about 10,000 people on the east side of town, and it's a urban district. There's no, farms out there or anything like that. It's all small home properties and whatnot. But I do champion for the the rural districts as well, because the reality is the rural districts are usually a lot more conservative. You get into the dense, big city areas, and liberalism just seems to increase. So over the last couple of years, we've been dealing with redistricting and things like that, and I've really fought hard to make sure that our rural districts always had a say. I have a couple of op-eds out about the President of the Senate fired the the chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate this year, and how that plays a role in the urban versus rural battle within our state. And it's significant, folks. Some of these things are just really complicated, and I would encourage you to reach out and let us help explain it in great detail so you kind of know what's going on, because there's a lot of gamesmanship that happens in the legislature. Tonight, we're going to talk about Liz Cheney Republicans, what they're working on, and you'll figure out who the Liz Cheney Republicans are as we talk. What the Wyoming Freedom Caucus is working on, and I'll just tell you that's the opposite of a Liz Cheney Republican. We're going to talk about this process that I just started mentioning about the budget, how it works, and then I'm going to show you some ways that you can get involved and be educated about what's happening. And then we'll also talk about how all this ties into the election in 2024. Because I'll tell you this, you look at this chart over here, and you'll see that there's 26 little dots in this area here. This is just the House, folks, in Wyoming. And these 26 dots represent the more conservative part of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives in Wyoming. Up here, you have 5 Democrats. That's how many we have in the House of Representatives. And here's where they vote. They vote really nice and tightly together, just like they do in the House of Representatives in D.C. This is 31 Republicans right here, okay? And you can see how closely they're voting with those Democrats. They vote with them 87% of the time on average, okay? Those of us who are more conservative, we vote with the Democrats about 57% of the time. That means there's some bills that just aren't really all that partisan, and we all agree that we'll pass them. But one of the criticisms of this Wyoming Freedom Caucus is that we vote in lockstep. Well, you only have 2 choices, aye or no, on every vote, right? Well, you can see by this spread here how lockstep we are versus how tight these votes are. So when you hear somebody saying the Wyoming Freedom Caucus gets told how to vote and they all vote together, this proves that that's hooey. And by the way, this chart comes from Evidence-Based Wyoming. If you haven't heard of that, that link is down at the bottom there, but it's called Evidence-Based Wyoming, and that's a website that's generated by Doug Gerard, a local gentleman here. But he's a data guy, and he crunches a lot of data, and so you can go and build your own charts based on which legislators you want to compare. But this one just compares everybody and just shows you how we vote. The more conservative is toward the bottom, and the more liberal is toward the top. And obviously, there's some debate amongst us here because we don't all vote exactly together.
Are there any of the Campbell County people up in the top?
Yes, one of our representatives is in this group right here.
And that would be who?
That would be Ken Clausen. All right, moving on. All right, in 2023 in the general session, that's just this last year, the Wyoming Senate passed 3 bills. And then the Liz Cheney Republicans in the House, led by Albert Summers, took these 3 bills. School choice, that's an education savings account where the money follows the child. That bill, and parental rights in education. That bill, parental rights in education, would protect kids in 3rd grade and below, kindergarten through 3rd grade, from having to be taught gender studies. Okay? But it also would protect parents in ensuring that they are informed when something changes at school for their child. For instance, there was a young lady in Rock Springs that decided she wanted to be a boy. And her parents were never informed that at school she was transitioning to be a boy. And they found out eventually. There's currently a federal lawsuit in place. That bill, had it passed last year, would have required the school district to inform that mother and father what was going on. And real tax reform, we brought a bill last year that would have put a 5% cap on your property tax increases, on your assessment. And that bill did not see the light of day. So those are just some major things that happened. Lots of other things happened, but we're going to talk about those in more detail. So what is it that the Rhino Caucus, or this group over here, is doing this year? Well, they're bringing fake property tax reform, they're bringing fake parental rights in education, and they're bringing fake school choice. What do I mean by fake property tax reform? Okay, so just Friday, House Bill 45 came out. Barry Crago, he's a representative over in Buffalo, and he is a darling of the governor. And he brought out this bill that says that they're going to put a 5% cap, the very thing that they killed last year. They're going to put a 5% cap on your property tax increases. So that's a step in the right direction, but when you dig into the bill, there's a lot of other details that you need to know about. But back in 2021, Chuck Gray brought House Bill 99, and I call it Wyoming Freedom Caucus because he was a member of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus at that time. And the name of that bill was Property Tax Increase Limit. That bill limited your property tax increase to 3% maximum year over year. And just the difference between 5% and 3%, 5%, if every year your property tax went up 5%, it would double in 14 years. At 3%, you're out about 24 to 28 years before it would double. That's a pretty significant difference between the two. They amended that bill back in 2021 to be 20%. So in 5 years, your taxes could double. They amended it to 20%, but then they killed the bill. So even at 20%, they were not satisfied. And here's the thing, when you cut taxes, when your taxes, you pay less in taxes, what's that do to the government? They get less money. So if you watch the behavior, what you learn is that some people are watching out for the bureaucracy and some people are looking out for the taxpayers. So I'll let you determine who's doing what there. But they weren't happy with that 20%, and I've mentioned there that these are the people that have been in charge of property taxes and revenues for the last 20 years too, and still are in charge because there's 26 here, and if you combine the Democrats and the Republicans, there's 36 up there. And 36 always outvotes 26. All right, the insiders, that's the people we're talking about. Suddenly they're having this awakening that maybe we'd ought to do something about tax reform. After killing those bills in 2021 and 2023, now they're bringing what they call a conservative commitment, and that's this 5% property tax relief. I'm going to take a moment here and just talk about a few details about that House Bill 45, just so you guys understand it. There's a young lady out there named Cindy Barlow. She's part of the Equality State Taxpayers Association. Her take on this is that House Bill 45 should be killed. I'm going to tell you why I disagree with that slightly, but it is a bad bill. So this is going to get a little bit complicated, but when you pay your property taxes, you pay for the building and the land. And they're separated when you look at your assessment each year. It'll tell you how much is land and how much is building. House Bill 45 only applies to the building. So the more land you have, the less of your tax bill is going to have that 5% cap on it. So it only applies to the structural building that you live in as your residence. So there's a big change. All the other tax bills apply to your property as well. And it's at 5%, which means it can double over time. The good thing about this bill is it is effective January 1st of this year. So your tax bill that you will start paying, if you split your tax bill in half and pay it twice, 2 different times, when you pay in October, is it October or November? You pay in November, I think. When you pay in November, this 5% cap will apply if it passes. Yes?
So that means that they can raise the property tax on your land, whatever they want.
They can. There is a requirement that it has to be within certain limits, and so, but
25%.
they certainly can maximize that. You're right. It leaves a window open to fiddle around with how much your property.
You'll do it individually,
If they can't get enough money.
but you
one
can
way,
also see for your congressmen all of their
Well,
voting records,
farmers,
historical
their
and
land is
last
ag land, it is taxed differently.
for 2000.
Ag land is taxed based on
Again, we go
production
back
value.
to all
In other words, how much
New
hay
American
you
and look
get
at
on that
that
land, how many cattle you could run, that's how they
It won't
tax.
give you what they voted on individually.
But by the way, I've been hearing complaints from ag
Constitutional voting
landowners
records,
that
I think,
the
current
cost of all those things like hay, they're skyrocketing. So, but if you want any particular bill, wildlife.gov will be in place. And again, insiders' sudden awakening to the need of parental rights protections in this election year is very interesting, isn't it? Same thing with the tax bill. Suddenly it's election year and they're coming around. They're not coming all the way, and this bill hasn't passed yet, so it could be weaker than this by the time it passes, because remember, we only have 26 votes, so we will try to get the K through 3 back into that bill, but without their help, we can't get that done.
I heard in the last few days that when this bill started out.
All right, basic parental rights and education. So I said that the bill did two things last year. I don't recall that during the debate. I think in Florida, it's K through 3, that's where the bill originally came from. This is the bill, you guys right there, the votes. And can you tell everybody how everybody voted?
So in the Senate, the only select or Campbell County people that voted nay were Arlo.
You support the speaker.
I think that's it.
So Ogden voted. By the way, it only passed the Senate on 18 to 12.
How'd you know?
My op-ed pointed out that he had missed 77 votes, so it was a little obscure why he fired the chairman of the appropriations committee for not being at a meeting.
What does excuse mean?
Yes, Tim. The bill that's coming out through education right now, I'm pretty, I hate to say it, because I can't, I'm pretty, but here's what I hate you can do, is I want to know how people voted on this. But here's what you can do, you want to know how people voted on this. It's going to be on the screen. You go to wildedge.gov, and I look up on the screen SF1, wildedge.gov, 17, you look up SF 2023, and you can go to a vote tab, from 2023. And you can go to a vote tab, you can see exactly how it could guess, and it would just be a guess. George, you had a question? I could guess, but it would just be a guess. Okay. George, you had a
Also
question?
go to the New American. You can also go to the New American, and it's got statement, I think it's the last issue.
Yeah, it'll give a scorecard for how constitutional. Yeah, it'll give a scorecard for how constitutional they
I don't
voted.
think it'll do it individually, but you can also see for your congressmen all of their voting record, historical and last legislative session for 2023. And again, you can go back to the New American and look that up for the state lawmakers also. It won't give you what they voted on individually, but it'll give you what their constitutional voting record is, I think.
So, but if you want any particular bill, wildlife.gov would be the place. So, but if you want, again, insider's sudden awakening to the need of parental rights protection. And again, insider's sudden awakening to the need of parental rights, the same thing with the tax action. Suddenly it's election year, and they're the same thing with the tax bill. Suddenly it's election year, not coming all the way. And this bill hasn't passed yet, so it could be weaker. They're not coming all the way. And this bill hasn't passed yet. We only have weaker than this when it passes. So remember, we will try to get the K through 3 back into that bill, but we will try to get the K through 3 back into that bill, but without their help, we can't get that done.
I heard in the last few days that when this bill started out.
I don't recall that during the debate. I think in Florida, I don't recall that originally came from. I think in Florida, it's K through 3 as a bill, and can you tell everybody how this is the bill? You've got to take those votes.
So in the
And can you
Senate,
tell
the
everybody how
only select or Campbell County. So in the Senate, the only were select or Campbell County people that voted nay were Arlo. I think that's it. How'd you know? How'd you know?
My My op-ed pointed out that he had missed 77 votes. My op-ed pointed out that he had missed 77 votes. So the chairman of the appropriations committee fired the chairman of the appropriations committee for not being at the meeting. Yeah, it could be anything that leadership does. Yeah, it could be anything that leadership does. Let's just say this, if I were missing, probably wouldn't be excused. Let's just say this, if I were missing, who you know, probably wouldn't be excused. Why did you lose 77 votes? Well, according to the, why did you lose 77 votes? Well, according to the JED record, well, state JED, governor, JED for the shot show, state JED, the middle session, governor, flew the shot show, was a shot show in the middle session. So according to his response to my op-ed, he had to go down to Texas. According to his response to my op-ed, he had to go down to Texas because his family had a grand opening of the hotel. So yeah, things were moving. All right, so this bill is coming through the education. All right, so I didn't give you the. So this bill is coming through the education committee. I didn't give you the note for a new bill. It just half of it. The bill was last year called parental rights. It's just half of it. I would say this is a step in the right direction. Kind of like the 5%. I would say this is a step in the right direction. Kind of like the if you 5% only on your home. Think about how we got into the mess we got into, where we're at today. If you think about how we got into the mess we got into, where we're at today, gradually over time. It didn't happen with the Democrats. They used what's called gradually over time. To take the liberals and the Democrats, they used what's called. We're going to have to get into the practice of doing this step and have 12. We're going to have. I would love it if we had the majority of these people here. I would love it if we. So if I could get these people here to where parents were notified. So if I could get to where parents were notified, I can't get. I'd take those K through 3 protected. Even if I can't get gender studies. K through 3.
Was K through 3
protected
just a
from happening.
compromise? Could it have been K through 3?
No, they don't desire that.
Oh,
They don't want it, and there were efforts to put it back in, and they stripped it. They refused to budge. There were people on the, Bo Beitman and Sherry Steinmetz are on the Education Committee. They made multiple efforts to try to make that a good bill, and were defeated every time. Okay? And you can go and watch those meetings from this last interim. They're actually on YouTube. You can watch the debate back and forth and see what's going on. Most everything that we do, it's not in a back room somewhere. And there are some of those things that I'm not too privy to. Those things are on video where you can go and watch them. All right? And moving on, fake school choice. Okay, education savings account. Have you heard of this, backpack funding?
If I can take you back 1 second.
Okay.
So we don't have a number for the
new bill?
parental rights,
The new bill.
but even though it's not much, you're still in favor of it.
If that's all I can
Whatever
get.
we can get, we'll take it. Okay.
Because, listen, a year ago, we had, right now we have nothing, but a year ago, we brought a good bill and we got nothing out of it,
Yeah.
Chloe's.
Okay.
right? It passed the Senate, and in the House, we didn't even get to debate it because the speaker kept it in his drawer.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus blew that up nationally, that he had done that. And he came under a great deal of pressure, and maybe that's why he's seen the light, and now he wants to have parental rights bills. But whatever it takes, we're going to try to shed light on what's happening down there. And, you know, that I get a lot of criticism from my colleagues for doing that. They don't like to work in the light. And I'm sorry. I'm about transparency, and the Freedom Caucus is about transparency. We want you to see what's happening. And that's the only way you can make an intelligent vote. Okay? School choice, education savings accounts. So Arizona has a good example of this. We've modeled a lot of our bills after what Arizona's done. And Arizona had to work at this a little bit at a time too. They did not get it all at once. But here's what's happened. The speaker, who was the one that kept it in the drawer after it passed the Senate, this same story about this bill here, this is the school choice bill, he has suddenly seen the light, and school choice is a good thing. And so much so, he's written his own bill. Now, he didn't take credit for his own bill. He shoved it into the Education Committee and made them put their names on it. But here's the issue with this bill. It starts out very much like the bill that was available last year that passed the Senate, in that K through 12 would have an education savings account available to the parents. They could take the funds and go anywhere in the state to any kind of school and have their kid educated there. What's different is he has limited it to the poor only. So only the poor will get these education savings accounts. I think it's 250% of the poverty, national poverty level. If you're that or below, you'll get a voucher so that you can go pay for school choice and take your kids to a private school. But that's not all. If that's all I could get, I would vote for that, because we'd get at least the poor people would have a chance for school choice, right? That's a move in the right direction. That's incrementalism. But this has what's called a poison pill put in it. The poison pill on this bill now is what's going to lead to universal daycare. Okay? What it's called an ESA for the poor for preschool. Okay? And in my opinion, that is welfare expansion. And it's the government wanting to take your children from the cradle and start educating them the way they see fit. Again, this is from people who refuse to protect K through 3 from gender studies, right? So just, you can extrapolate this stuff, right? So this Damascus Road experience that Albert Summers had, it kind of has, it smacks of, it's not going to really be something that conservatives can vote for. I'll tell you this, and I'm going to get into the details of this. In this 20-day session, because we have such short time and the budget is so important, any bills other than the budget require a 2/3 introduction vote. So for the first time in our lifetimes, the conservatives have enough votes to kill bad bills. It's because we've got over 20 people, we can kill bad bills. This is likely one that we will kill. And when we get to the part about the 2024 election, I'm going to bring this bill up again, because they're going to use us killing this bill as a campaign slogan, that we killed school choice. Okay? That same school choice bill that we brought in 2023, we're bringing it again, so that there will be a vote on real school choice versus fake school choice. And we're doing that with the other two issues as well. All right.
On school choice, there's the argument about its state constitution doesn't allow it. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's two issues. There's the Blaine Amendment, which says that you can't use state dollars for sectarian purposes. You cannot send a kid to a parochial school and pay for it. Now, those have been struck down by the United States Supreme Court, so it hasn't happened here, but it would easily be extrapolated that that would be unconstitutional. So more than likely, we would be able to take our kids to the Catholic school and have it paid for by the state. It would just take a court case to prove that to be true. The other issue, and this is different from other state constitution, and that is that if any money is given to, any state money, no state money can be given to any organization that is not under the complete control of the state. So if you have, I guess, if you're willing to take your school that's private and put it completely under the control of the state, then you can accept those dollars. And I think that that is what most people that want school choice are trying to get away from, right? There's the issue, and we will be bringing a constitutional amendment to fix that. But again, that will require a 2/3 vote to begin with. It'll take a 2/3 vote at the end, and then it'll go to the ballot, and you all would have to, in a majority, vote for that. So it's a high hurdle. It's not likely to happen this go-around, but we're going to try.
So this money, it comes out of, where
General
does the-
fund.
It's a general fund?
Yes, sir.
It doesn't come out of the school fund?
It will eventually in some ways, because schools are paid by how many kids are attending. And if you drop the number of kids attending, their funding is going to go down.
John, how likely is the Education Committee to vote in favor of your idea, of your bill?
Not at all. We already tried it during the summer, and they killed it. We already tried to bring that bill through that committee, and they killed it. It won't make the 2/3 introduction vote. But we'll get that recorded so everybody will know who voted for the real school choice and who voted for the fake school choice. And we have enough votes to kill this bill. Okay? Back to your question about school funding. Each time we've done this, we've made concessions where even though a kid doesn't go to the public school, about 2/3 of the money would still go to the public school even though they wouldn't have the student to pay for it. So we've made concessions to try to get the teachers union and the school administrators to support this. It just hasn't happened yet, hasn't worked out.
In Arizona, this was just, a preacher boy at our church, he sends his kids, and he said that the school, the public schools get about $12,000 per student, and he gets $8,000 per student.
That's right.
Each of his kids.
Yep. And he can probably get his kids educated for that 8,000. And in this state, by the way, it's 20,000 now per student that we spend in public schools. And about half of our kids are reading at grade level. At $20,000. Yes, sir.
Two questions. First is, shouldn't complete state control be limited to meeting minimum standards in reading, writing, math, and sciences? And the second question is, can't you approach this from the standpoint of the money going by default to the public school system is de facto a monopoly of the public education system? The government's based on checks and balances.
Well, our Constitution requires that the state provide a free education to every citizen between 1 and 26. Okay, so that's where the monopoly comes from. And folks, when we have school choice, they have school choice in Arizona, and when they polled it before they voted on it, 43% of the people wanted school choice, but when they had it, only 3% took advantage of it. 3%. Because when it came to taking your kids away from the football team and all the other things, the ease of taking them to public school, it didn't happen, for the most part. But I will tell you this, what it does is it puts pressure on the schools to perform better. And that's what we really want. What we all want is excellence in education. And competition creates that excellence in education.
We spend a lot of money on excellence in education, but there's another area that we spend a lot of money on that nobody knows how much money it is. And that's in sports. And that's when we haul people in a bus all over the state and out of state. We put them up in motels, we feed them, and nobody ever tracks that. And I've asked over and over again.
Tim got some numbers back when he and I were together in the legislature, just for our district here in Campbell County. And just so you know, the way the model works, we send a lump sum to the school district here. It's called a block grant, based on a model that we have to follow. The Supreme Court forced us to follow a certain model of making sure everything was funded just right. But once it gets here, they can fund it any way they want. They can do anything they want with that money. And I think if I recall correctly, the budget for activities in Campbell County at that time, this is 2 years ago, was like $1.8 million a year. And we were actually spending over $2.5 million. So then the question is, I would go to the school board and I'd say, well, what are you guys going to do if we have to make like a 10% cut? Because at that time, we were all, because of COVID, we were all thinking everything's going to get cut. And they told me that if they had to do a 10% cut, they'd have to fire 150 teachers.
Lie.
Well, where did the money come from to move from 1.8 to $2.5 million in activities? If it requires, a 10% cut requires getting rid of 150 teachers. I can tell you where the money's coming from. It's the pay that we in our model would have put towards teachers. We had an effort when Tim and I were in the legislature together to try to give the teachers a raise, but we would force them that they had to give it to the teachers. And they refused to allow that because they want to have complete control of that money.
Well, see, that money isn't even appropriated to the schools because it comes out of the transportation department. That's what they.
Well, the transportation is a little different, yes. And it's on 100% refund, so they can spend as much money as they want and we'll reimburse them 100%.
That's tax money.
Yep.
And if we want to cut costs, that's a good place to cut. There's only one.
And another issue with
Students
that.
take advantage of that.
Another issue with that is the Wyoming High School Athletic Association because they're not worried about the spending. They're not setting up events so that, you know, teams can come together or that type of thing. Because there's no reason to. The money is there. Nobody's complaining. They've got the money to do it. That's why you'll see a girls cross-country team, 5 or 6 kids on the bus, and then a boys cross-country and a whole nother bus. Yeah, it's egregious. When you have too much money, this is what happens. Get a little bit off track here.
What's the accountability? Is there any accountability at all? I mean,
These people right here and
well,
your school board.
but,
The whole idea is local control in the school board. That's where you have to change it.
you know, I got a buddy on the school board, and he's not even told what goes on, so, how are we supposed to know?
Because what happens is the administrations run the school board versus the other way around. The school board is supposed to be accountable to the people. That's why we elect them. But if we don't show up at the school board meetings and hold them accountable for what they're doing, they tend to do things the way they want to do it. And frankly, you've been to these school board meetings just like I have, and they're not well attended. Unless there's a mask mandate, then people show up.
I guess my question is on the separation of the teams, if it's not a liability, potential liability, if the girls are on the boys' bus and, you
That's
know.
the whole reason I went out for cross country.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, an accountability issue or.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit off track. I want to get back to the state stuff, but you can see the problem. We have tried to do things, what's called color the money, where as the money leaves the state and comes to the school district, they have to spend it on certain areas. And you wouldn't believe how hard the teachers union fights against that. And honestly, it would help the teachers. They always say they want things to be better in the classroom. We'd love to spend the money in the classroom, but the administrators don't want that for whatever reason. That's why we have 4 principals at each high school.
If we go to the school board meetings,
Mhm.
can we ask these questions and they
Absolutely.
answer? Will they answer?
Not necessarily, but we have people that have been going time and time again. Jerry Rader's one of them. And eventually, they have to start answering questions. And if they don't, people that go to these meetings can scream bloody murder, get it in the paper, and get these people unelected.
Okay.
Tim's on the school board, and he's tried to get information just so he can make good decisions, and they've tried to block him.
Yeah.
So this is because we as a people, I'm really getting off track here, I'm sorry. We as a people have allowed other people to do these things for us. If the people in this room would run for the school board, things could change. But we've allowed other people to do it for us, and they've been happy to do it. There's no pay in this. And when they don't get held accountable, they do things the way they see fit. And it may not match what our values are. So, but we've got to, it's really on us, it's not on them that there's a problem. We have to do the hard work of taking time, and I'm guilty of it too. I just jumped straight from Joe Blow citizen running his business and taking care of his family into the Wyoming State Legislature. I mean, that's typical of me, head first in the deep end. But I was very guilty of just paying attention to my world and letting other people represent me in the state government. I knew who they were my customers. I talked to them about things like gun rights and whatnot, and I was frustrated. They weren't doing what I'd asked. But I wasn't doing anything about it until I finally jumped in and made it important. And I came back from the legislature this year. I'll just tell you guys, I threw a real pity party. My business was kind of in disarray. My equipment was suffering. I lost some employees. And I was working and for about 2 hours, I was thinking, I should just stay here and run my business. I shouldn't be going down to Cheyenne. And then I realized that if I don't go down to Cheyenne, eventually I'm not going to have a business to run because the government's going to take it away from me. Okay? So this is critical enough now, and you can just watch the news, any news, and understand where the country's headed. And I know that the people in this room are patriots, but we got to be willing to fight for it, whether we like it or not. And it's expensive. You know, when your wife's on the school or the library board and she's on the cover of the newspaper all the time, and I'm in Cheyenne, I depend on people like Hector to defend her because I can't be here to do that. And politically, it's not it's not good for me to do so anyway. And that breaks my heart. But know this, the people in this room, you're the majority. I can tell you right now that the people that meet me in the drive-thru of my business, or the people I talk to door in my district, they're just like you all, okay? It's just that we've allowed the more elitist people in our communities to represent us, and their values are slightly different. So, got to step up. I apologize, got off track there. Hopefully that was good information for everybody. All right, what's the Wyoming Freedom Caucus doing? Real property tax reform, honest parental rights in education, and universal school choice. I talked about the history, back in 21, now in 2024, 3 years later, we've moved them from not accepting a 20% cap to a 5% cap. That's improvement, folks. That's incrementalism. Even though Cindy Barlow's probably, going to kick us around for voting for that bill, if we don't vote for that bill, you're going to read in the newspaper going to kick us around for voting for that bill. If we don't vote for that bill, you're going to read in the newspaper that the Wyoming Freedom Caucus killed tax reform. The most important thing to everybody in this state right now is tax reform, fixing their tax bills. Now, the bill that Barry Crago brought may be even worse than it is now by the time it passes. Probably will be, because again, we don't have the votes to stop that from happening. We will make every effort to fix the bill and make it a good bill, but we will lose because we don't have the votes. We're trying to protect you, the taxpayer, while they're trying to protect the bureaucracy. They're suddenly wanting to appease the taxpayers. That's why they're chipping away at it and giving the minimum amount they can to help you. Yeah.
I was told today that if people don't vote for the constitutional amendment that's going to be on the ballot, that it's going to negate the cap. That's what I was told.
So, long story short, yes and no. I was in a conversation with the Department of Revenue head today, and they found a novel way around that for their bill. But they didn't tell us for the committee bill, which they could have. Back this summer, we could have had the bill that had 3% instead of 5%, had the inflation rate of inflation as the cap. Could have had that be constitutional. So instead, that bill requires the change in the Constitution, which means it can't go into effect until January of 25. The good thing about House Bill 45, Barry Crago's bill, is it can go into effect immediately. Now,
What are you talking about?
taxes.
This is an exemption, just like our military
Yes.
property tax is an exemption.
That's the novel.
You do not have to change the Constitution.
That's the novel idea, okay? And it's the same as the people's
Don't
initiative.
patronize me.
It's the same as the
Don't
people's
patronize
initiative.
me.
I'm sorry, Holly, that's not what I'm doing. I'm telling you that this novel idea of calling it an exemption is how they got around what Jeff brought up, constitutionality. And if you recall, I had concerns about the constitutionality of the people's initiative, and I
No
brought it up.
kidding. I wanted to belt you.
Well, I brought it up in the GOP meeting. And the novel idea
Oh, I have
of
been.
calling it an exemption is how they got around that, okay? Now, they could have told us that this summer, and we could have made a lot of bills work with the Constitution. In fact, our real tax reform bill will use this novel idea and call it an exemption. It's only using the word exemption. It's not changing anything. Whether it's 5%, 3% cap, it's still a 3% cap. But they're calling it an exemption because you can exempt, the legislature can exempt any property they want. That's how they get around it. So good question. Thank you for your comments. All right. So our bill will be based on either wage growth or inflation. If inflation's negative, highly unlikely under the Biden administration, but if it were, your tax would go down. And by the way, had we had the 3% back in 2021, before all the skyrocketing property tax values, can you imagine how much money you would have saved if you'd had that cap? Remember that when these people claim that they're victorious because they finally showed up and got a 5% tax cap. Okay? And we also are fighting for acquisition value, which means that your property tax will be based on the price you paid for your property, not your neighbors. Yes, sir.
Yeah, about that, shouldn't the tax increases be based on the increases in median income minus inflation, not what your neighbors are paying for your house, for a house, or what?
Yeah, and I think that's a novel idea as well, and that's why I mentioned in the one bill, we might use wage growth.
Yeah.
The only thing about wage growth, I looked it up, and over the last 5 years, it's been right there with inflation in Wyoming. Now, you look at the budget that the governor just submitted, it's $9.9 billion for 2 years, almost $10 billion. When he took office in 2018, it was 8.1. That's a 23% increase since 2018. But it does almost match inflation. The question is, have your wages gone up 23% since 2018? That's the issue. All right. We're going to bring real parental rights in education. Same thing, we're going to bring the bill that has the K through 3 as well as the protection for the parents. And in the education choice, we'll bring the bill that was passed the Senate and held in the drawer by the Speaker. All right. Particular things about the budget. Again, I said it's 20 days. Most of us will work on about 20 hours of work a day with 4 hours of sleep, to be honest with you, to get through, at least through that first week of the budget. So the first 2 weeks of the month we're down there. The budget is the priority. We'll work on it at the same time the Senate's working on it, around the second week. And the non-budget bills require a 2/3 introduction vote to even get a chance to be heard. Specifically, the first reading by the Joint Appropriations Committee members will be explaining department by department. That'll take about a day and a half to go through what each department is asking for, what the governor is recommending, and what the Joint Appropriations Committee is suggesting as well. The second and third reading will have amendments. Last year, Wyoming Freedom Caucus members brought 60 amendments. Things like trying to sell one of the 2 state jets, things like not funding gender studies at the University of Wyoming, things like that. We'll also try to rein in spending. Let me tell you this, in the supplemental budget last year, we spent $540 million. If you listen to Ogden and Albert, they brag that for every dollar that was brought in, extra money, some of it came from your property taxes, some of it came from high price of natural gas. For every dollar, they put 75 cents into savings, and that was considered conservative. Not much of that money ever had a chance to come back to you. I don't think anybody in this room got any of that money back. But it's in the savings of the state right now. But that 1/4 that they did spend was $540 million. The problem with that $540 million is the supplemental budget. We had already funded the government the year before in our biennium budget. Not only that, but of that $540 million, 112 of it is ongoing, which shows up on this year's budget. And it will be in every budget from here on out. What I'm getting wind of right now is the budget that they're bringing forward, both from the governor and from the JAC, is $400 million more in growth of government, ongoing spending. So in 2 budgets, 2 years, we've grown the government $500 million if we pass this budget the way it's written. $500 million. That's 5% in just 2 years. That's government growth. And that's what we're up against. My feeling is they're probably trying to get this done because they're afraid of what this is happening and they're afraid of you. The voters are now getting upset and they're voting in more conservatives and they're not going to get a chance to bloat the budget like that again. So they're getting everything they can get right now. And we'll get to deal with that budget next go around. Both the House and Senate will have to reconcile the differences. They'll negotiate, and then they'll bring it back to us and we'll have a final vote on it. All right. 2018, again, it was $8.1 billion. Now it's $9.9 billion from the governor. Craig is the consensus revenue estimating group. We don't spend our money based on what we brought in. We spend our money based on what we think we're gonna bring in the future. So we have this group of experts that estimate how much we're gonna bring in. And they have been underestimating it every time. Like this year, they said, well, we got it wrong last year. We actually have an extra almost $800 million. So I don't know if you've heard any legislators say they're gonna try to get that back to you or not, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like we're gonna find a way to spend that 800 million, at least 400 million of it. It's gonna go to ongoing spending. Priorities for us is reduce the budget wherever we see an opportunity, defund such things as gender studies at UW, and sell one of the state's jets. Maybe even not fund cloud seeding, things like that.
Tell Governor Gordon he has to sell the jet, otherwise it's not reducing the carbon emissions.
Well, I'd love to have data on his carbon footprint, right? Require offset, okay, each year, prior to me coming into the legislature, Chuck Gray was doing this, I took over from him. Every year, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus brings in an amendment to the rules. And this amendment is that if you bring an increase to the budget, you have to go find an offset. So whatever the Joint Appropriations Committee brings to us, we can't increase it. So what typically happens is, the governor brings a budget, the JAC messes around with it, it's pretty close, maybe a little bit up, a little bit down, and then it gets onto the floor, and they tell us we've got an extra $800 million, and these people go crazy. Within hours, they're spending tens of millions of dollars, and they laugh about it. I got up last year and said, you know what, in the last 2 hours you've increased the budget $65 million. And they laughed and clapped about your money.
That's disgusting.
All right, so what we do is we try to require offsets. We've never been able to get that rule passed, okay? It's just common sense. We draw the line and where the governor said he needs to fund things. We don't let it go up from there. And that doesn't pass. What we're up against, that $788 million revenue, the Liz Cheney Republicans, they're gonna want to spend it. Liz Cheney Republicans know that their time is short. They'll do all they can to protect the bureaucracy and stick it to the taxpayers. That's what we're talking, and who's protecting the bureaucracy. And folks, we're trying to get people like from the Freedom Caucus into the Joint Appropriations Committee, but they purposely keep us out. They do not want us to know how they're governing, okay? I could bring you so much more information if I were on that committee. Yes?
Why is the governor putting together a budget? That's not his responsibility.
Yeah, it is.
The governor,
Just like the president puts together a budget and submits it to the Congress.
I thought their job was just to execute.
It is. So here's how it works, though. The departments are the ones that are spending the money. So the governor asked them to submit a budget. They do. Like when we were in a crunch for money, he said, you've got to cut your budget 10% this time, 10% another time, 15% another. So he dictates, this is what I want to see you do, or stay flat with your budget, whatever you're going to do. They submit it all up to him. He drafts a complete budget that's about that thick. And then that gets sent to the Joint Appropriations Committee, and they decide, well, will we give it to you or not? That's how, and they go through all of those. Those departments come and testify, this is why we're asking for more money, this, that, and the other. And then they bring that recommendation to us and we vote on it. And if we see areas to change, that's where those 60 amendments come from. We're hoping to double that this year and hit them with 120 amendments. Looking for places where we can cut. Now, we lose on almost all those budget amendments, but we still keep hammering and testifying as to why it needs to change, much like you would if you were there. Okay? And that's just about a 24/7 deal getting through all that.
Wow.
Okay, this is where you all can get plugged in. These are some good sources for information. I put up their Chip and Bear show. We do a Facebook Live. We used to do it every night. Now we're so busy, he with the majority floor leader and myself running the Freedom Caucus, that it's probably 2 or 3 times a week. And the Chip and Bear show, we're just trying to give you information on what's happening right then and there. The Independence Network actually goes down there, and some of those guys are down there doing their shows. And that Independence Network has Cowboy State Politics. Anybody here pay attention to Cowboy State Politics podcast? A few people, okay? Look, really good information there. Just Blame Joey and the Ramble Room are a couple of others that do that. Cowboy State Daily is probably the most accurate statewide newspaper, and it's not very accurate. But you got to get your information from somewhere. It's good to know what's going on. And then, you know, if you get a whiff of something, you want to know more, reach out to us legislators and ask us, what's the story on this? Okay. Cowboy State Daily, the Casper Star Tribune, Vic Wright in the morning, he tries to stay up on some stuff, and then the Gillette News Record. So that's probably from conservative to liberal, the way I see it.
Indian News Record.
You forgot the Glenn Woods.
Yeah, I don't know how you listen. I've never listened to him up here. I only listen to him when he's shot.
Yeah, 10:30.
10:30.
10:30 a.m.
Yep, he does pretty well. All right. I kind of took care of question and answer where we went through there, but I mentioned here, learn to follow bills as they progress through the process at wildedge.gov, and you can actually learn to read the amendments as they come up, and learn you can plug the amendment into the bill and figure out how it works. At some point, we probably need to have a little class on this. And then you can actually go and testify. You look at this webpage on wildedge.gov, you drill down to the meeting, and you can click on that testify, and you can register to testify. Some meetings, some chairman will allow you to go on Zoom and attend remotely. Others require that you come down to Cheyenne for the meeting. And they're always during the day when you're all working. So it's not easy to do. But it helps us a lot, because when you're not testifying, guess who is?
The other side.
The lobbyists are testifying. And they're getting paid to do it, and probably not by you. So they're probably not trying to advance your best interests. That's the stuff that our legislators hear, is what the lobbyists are telling them. All right, what does this mean? Let's just talk about those three bills real fast. Education savings account. It's got a poison pill in it. Here's what the head Democrat in the Senate has said. He says he wants that bill to pass, and he's going to take it to court and get the K through 12 education savings account thrown out based on what George was talking about on the constitutionality. But he's going to keep the welfare expansion piece of daycare. So if we pass that bill when we have the chance to kill it with our 20 votes, then we're going to get welfare expansion. And we can't do that. So we'll likely kill that bill. The other bill, parental rights in education, we'll probably let it go, even though it's their bill and it's weak. Because it does give the parents those protections. They would be notified if somebody's transitioning. And then the tax bill. We'll be bringing, in each of these cases, we'll be bringing our own bills. And by the way, these three bills are only scratching the surface. That's three bills, 6 if you think of our alternative bills, out of about 700. Okay? Those two bills, the tax bill and the parental rights bill, will likely pass because we get you something. You get a cap on some part of your property taxes. That's better than nothing. And it's 5%, that's better than 20%. So I would call that a win with the makeup of a legislature like this. We got to incrementally change it. I'd love to change it all at once, but we got to put the right butts in the seats if we're going to do that. Okay? Any questions? Did we cover them all as we went?
How much of the money the state spends do they get from the federal government?
That's a good question, and I can't give you a straight answer on that because they massage these numbers, and I can look at 4 different reports and get 4 different answers on that. If you look at transportation, 90% of our highways are paid for by the federal government. 10% is coming from your tax on your fuel, but the rest of it's coming from the government. In education, it's about 11%. So every department's different. Health department, it's a little bit more. Last year, our Department of Corrections was 100% paid by ARPA funds by the feds. But now what we're seeing because of that, our penitentiaries are having to give drugs to transition males to females, and they're having to house males in the female prison as part of a federal law called the Rape Reduction Act.
Right.
So,
Right.
If you think that federal dollars don't come with strings, you're fooling yourself. Now, that $450 million for Department of Corrections, ARPA funds, gone. This year, we have to fund it. So most of that $788 million we're talking about will go to funding Department of Corrections again, and it won't have federal dollars. Somehow, I think the federal strings are gonna still be attached somehow. They have a nasty way of doing it, never going away. Good question.
So what's the state doing to preserve fossil fuels for the state of Wyoming?
Well, our governor,
I'm talking about the governor, I'm talking about the other.
governor's the leader of the state government, and he has a plan of managing the decline, is how I would describe it. And we're just calling him out for that, because we want the people of Wyoming to understand that's what he's doing. I think the governor of a state like Wyoming should stand up and fight and say, listen, we're going to produce low-cost, reliable energy out of coal, oil, and gas, and you can either buy it or not, but our people will buy it, and it won't. Our prices won't go up. And you want to talk about bringing manufacturers here? You have low-cost energy, you might have that start happening, but it takes having some cojones to stand up to the culture. And our governor, I don't know if you all know this, but he was the treasurer of the Sierra Club in 1993. And for 4 years, he was on the board of directors for another very, very green organization. And so I think he has a propensity to go that way anyway. But he can't really get from one place to another without being harassed if he talks about that much. So
Can we band together and like pull his electricity, because that's what they're going to do eventually, is pull all of our electricity, and we want,
yeah,
you know, it's almost like they want us to go back in the dark ages.
it is like that. I think, and I've written op-eds that say just that. We're all gonna be cold, and people are gonna die if we do this. It really is that vital. And then there are other things at play, like you know, what's China doing with our grid, and how capable are they? I'm running a bill right now to try to harden our grid. And other people are bringing bills, in the Wyoming Freedom Caucus are bringing bills that forbid foreign countries from owning land, ag land, or land near our military bases. But if you read the news, governors in other states are doing that by executive order. We have a Bitcoin operation just outside F.E. Warren, and our governor has done nothing about it as far as I know. So I hate to disparage the poor fellow, but everybody needs to know what he's doing, where he's at. And if you don't like it, you need to let him know, because he's doubled down since I've been exposing this. I don't know if you read the op-ed that I was in Fox News, because he went to Harvard and gave a speech saying that, he said, it's clear that the earth is warming, it's clear it's because of CO2, man-made CO2, and it's clear we got to do something about it right away.
Wyoming's gonna be a leader.
And Wyoming is going to be the first state to be carbon negative. That's what he said.
Oh, no.
So do you know anything about the Nebraska power companies?
Very little, but I know that Nebraska has got some serious issues with actors coming in and buying properties near missile silos and things like that. I'm not sure about their power companies.
Well, truth be known, we've got enough in our state savings to build a clean energy coal-fired power plant
Oh, yeah.
and be self-sufficient
Yeah.
with our own minerals and everything. On another point, on the parental rights one, it says K through 3 to be protected from gender studies or gender training or whatever. Have they tried to make it K through 6 or anything?
We can't get K through 3.
I understand, but was there ever even, was it approached to do a
I'm not familiar with anybody trying to do
okay,
it.
because that
About third
K
grade.
through 3 seems a little lean to me.
I don't disagree with you there.
Okay.
Can you
Ben?
use that as a tactic? Because they seem to.
Yeah,
do
that's
that
called
too,
the
like-
Overton window. You take an extreme position to try to get them there. We could, but they're not moving.
Yeah.
They're killing everything. and then they're blaming us for killing things.
So if this is a budget session, why do you vote on something besides the budget?
We could kill everything. I could ask my colleagues as the Freedom Caucus chair to do that, to kill everything except for the budget, which doesn't require the 2/3 vote. The problem is, we would be crucified in the media. And though you guys are paying attention, would understand why we did such a thing, most voters would not, and you wouldn't have these people in office next year.
And you can't get a true story in the media to push your argument no matter what anyway.
You know, yes and no. You know, I've kind of taken the Trump model, dealing with the media. Use them for what you can. Use them and abuse them. I can tell you right now that the insiders, the Liz Cheney Republicans, the leadership that we're up against, they've never had to spend so much time in the media talking about what's good about them. And the reason is because we're telling everybody what's bad about them. And because we're out there telling these stories, it's selling newspapers. The Cowboy State Daily loves to have us talk because those guys won't talk. They don't want to talk to the people. So they're running our stories. And it's ticking them off because now, if you look at Albert Summers' story that he submitted saying that, why does the Freedom Caucus tell their people how to vote? If you go down there and see what he really was upset about, the first thing after he quotes a whole bunch of old dead people is he says the media. That's who he was mad about at the time, because the media was picking up all of our town halls, everything else that we're doing. We've had over 20 town halls, the Freedom Caucus has, trying to get the word out about what's happening. We brought up the whole BLM issue down in the southwest part of the state, which is the beginning of 30 by 30. We brought that up, we raised the alarm, and the media immediately came out and said, oh my gosh, these guys are crazy. Well, about a week and a half later, the governor puts out a statement that agreed with what we were saying, and so did the media. They came around. Those are the kind of wins we're trying to get. And because we are working with Washington, D.C. Freedom Caucus, we're able to get resources to allow us to work year-round and push the insiders to answer for the stuff that they're doing when most people aren't paying attention. And that's important, because I can tell you, everybody in here, in this group at least, they got jobs. Very few of us are retired. I don't think any of us are retired. All of us are still working. So this is part-time, doing this legislature stuff.
John?
Yes, sir.
I think you need to tell the folks how they can help you add the number of people on that conservative side, what we can do to help you.
Okay. So there was an article in the Cowboy State Daily recently about the money raised by the PACs. Okay? Did you read that article, Tim?
No.
So the other side has realized they've got to get their act together because we're winning. So they put a PAC together. And then they went to Jackson Hole and got a bunch of money from people that have worked with Planned Parenthood and pro-abortion programs and anti-gun programs, Democrats, Liz Cheney Republicans, and they raised $126 million. I'm sorry, take that back. $126,000, let me say that right, I apologize. $126,000. I was just talking about the budget, got the millions in my mind. $126,000. When they showed ours, we raised $42,000 in the same time frame. Okay? So we're out there trying to drum up funds so that we can protect these 26, because they're going to come after some of them. If they're vulnerable in their district, they're going to come after them. And we want to protect them. And so we're going to do that. And we're also going to try to promote where there's low-hanging fruit, where maybe somebody's not running for re-election. We've got candidates that we've recruited, and we need to get them promoted and into office. We're only about 4 votes away from picking our own leadership. We have our own majority floor leader. That's huge, okay? But it's only the second in charge. That really threw a wrench into their program when they have to include Chip Nyman in all their meetings in leadership. And so they're not happy about that. And they're going to try to change that so that he can't become the next Speaker of the House. But if we had 4 more, we could ensure at least we have leadership, and that's who determines what bills are going to get heard and debated and what bills will not.
Do you have any plans of who can run against Kim?
Yes. got some ideas.
Right. Definitely.
They have that.
And we do need to be in prayer. Folks, one of the things I wanted to say tonight is we can't put our faith and hope in the government. Okay? That's one thing the people in this room understand. But we can be part of it. God has blessed us with a government that is supposed to be of the people and for the people and by the people. So until that's gone, we've got to try to fight for it. Somebody had something.
Well, they've already started propping up King Klaus, and the Koch brothers and Liz Cheney's in charge is helping him already.
Yeah. Yep.
They're already running ads for him.
I hope that would open people's eyes if they see who's
Yeah, we can
supporting.
publicize the Liz Cheney action.
We're going to try. We're going to try to get the word out. Yeah. There's some pretty egregious people that have given money to that PAC for the Wyoming caucus, the traditional Republicans, the Uniparty, if you will. So, yeah.
The owner of the Cowboy State Daily, if I understood right, gave over $500 million to one of their PACs.
Yeah, and that money's, I don't know if it's, I think it's 500,000. I think it was half a
Was it
million.
500,000?
I think so. Same mistake I just made. But he did. That's $500,000 in one lump sum. It was last year that he did that, but that money hasn't been spent yet. That's the Hope PAC.
Yeah.
Wyoming Hope.
That's right.
And basically, it's that Wyoming Hope supported the same people. You can go see who got money from Wyoming Hope, and it's the Uniparty. Yes, sir.
Is there any way to limit what the public school system can teach to things like reading, writing, math, and science, maybe civics and economics, and that everything else, would be considered basically the biggest pack there is? I mean, it's nothing more than reading off the Democrats.
Theoretically, yes, and I'm working on that. I have a no critical race theory can be taught bill right now, but the LSO, these are the attorneys that draft the bills for us and they're supposed to work for us. They're really good at drafting bills about why your bill won't work. And they have drafted a bill saying that, well, we're not supposed to pick the curriculum. Well, curriculum in my mind is very different from reading, writing, arithmetic. And so we can restrict some of those things. In fact, it was the legislature that chose to go, I'm drawing a blank now, what is the education system that?
Common Core.
Common Core.
We can't even get rid of Common Core.
So we could get federal dollars, the legislature. Now, Common Core, if that's not curriculum, I don't know what it is. You know?
CRT has been around since I was in high school. I was raised right close to an Indian reservation, and an Indian chief was brought to my history class to tell us how bad white peoples are and what we did to his people. And a few of us stood up and said, I don't know you, we didn't live it when this happened, so
Right.
how dare you say this to us?
Yeah. It's
But that
racist.
was in the 70s.
Yeah.
Would the kids today have the understanding, the knowledge to say that to someone who's telling them that they're bad because they're white?
I think the answer to that depends on how much the parents are involved. And the more we allow the government to raise the kids, the less the parents are involved, and the more they can teach them things like critical race theory and make them buy it, not buy into it. Man, I went way over.
Can I say one thing?
You're our only
To be
speaker,
helpful?
John.
So when we're talking, to go back to the Kim Closton argument, so one thing that helped me going door to door last summer, 2 summers ago, was I literally took screenshots of my phone, on my phone, of people's voting records. And so like here I have House Bill 66 prohibiting mass vaccine testing discrimination, and people were like, oh yeah, I love Eric Barlow, and I'd be like, oh really? Well, let's just look at his voting record together. And so I'd show them, I'm like, hey, I got this off of Wild Edge, and it says, look here, prohibiting mass vaccine and testing discrimination. It already had come over from the House, and Ken Closton voted against that. So he actually thinks that it's okay that you have to wear a mask. So here, just, keep that in your phone when you're going door to door. You have ammo to be like, well, have you seen his voting record? And the Rhino's favorite thing to say is, all voting records aside. And I'm like, what?
That's all that matters.
That's what they said in our email last week.
Aside.
Yeah, all voting records aside.
Some people like their representatives to be really nice people. And I'm not being accused of being a nice person. But really, I want to protect your money, your hard-earned money, your rights, the things that the government is supposed to do. They're supposed to protect your freedoms and your liberties. That's what I want to do. And if I have to be mean to do that, I'm sorry, I'm going to be mean. But I do like that, you know, the idea of going to Wild Edge and getting it, but I'm going to tell you, there's some other sites out there that kind of make it more digestible. Things like Wild Rhino and now this new Wyoming, what is it, Honor Wyoming. They do a good job. They boil it down to where it's more readable because it's very difficult to I mean, unless you know of a particular bill that really gets people fired up, like that one, it's hard to make a judgment of whether somebody's conservative, whether they're liberal, whether they're fence-centered. So a lot of these, there's about 5 different organizations out there that grade our grades. There's a new one out that's a fake one. Liz Cheney put one together back when she was trying to hold on to her seat, and there's a, you know, the Liz Cheney Republicans put one together that was just like that, and it flips it. It has me less conservative than all of these Democrats right here. So it's easy to see through that one.
What's that one called?
It's PAC, I remember that. It's a project for accountability for conservatives, something like that. It's foolishness. It's the exact same name as the Liz Cheney one that she used to get her grade up.
But people don't argue with Wild Leg. They'll argue
Right.
about Wild Rhino.
Yeah, they can,
Yeah.
because it's boiled down.
Right.
You're right. It's just a good way to start and find out real quick where our legislators at. And I kind of like them for that, because most people haven't figured that Wild Edge out yet. Good.
So you were wrapping it up.
Yep, I'm good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Just take pictures of this. If you need a picture of something on there, we'll back up the slides. World's most expensive desserts over on the table there.
Yeah, there's over $1,000 in desserts sitting over there.
The
carrot cake is really good, by the way.
So, you were, you know, we talk about information out there, that's out there. I had a social studies teacher in 1973. He told our class, he said, listen people, everything you see, you hear, and you read is propaganda. It's any one person's opinion and opinion of reality. And when it comes to schools teaching history, you have to be very careful about that, because I was privileged when I was a junior in high school to talk to a rancher that was ranching down in Reno Junction. I was in high school, I didn't care what his last name was. But I got into a conversation with him. His parents homesteaded down around Reno Junction. I'll never forget what he told me. I brought up something about flea-bitten Indians as a junior in high school. And he said, listen, young man, you have no idea what you're talking about. And he proceeded to tell me that when his parents homesteaded down around Reno Junction, and he didn't call them Indians, he called them locals. This is real history here. I got a history lesson from somebody that experienced it. He knew. And I said, locals? And he said, yes, if it wasn't for them, my parents wouldn't have survived the first 2 winters. They're smart people, and they are. I've learned that. In my maturing mentally, I found out that I call them early Americans because they're earlier than me. I was born in Glasgow, Montana, so that makes me native also. So this term, native, is a bunch of baloney. Anyway, he said his parents grieved the day the cavalry came in and rounded them up and took them to reservations. He said they were already melding and being absorbed into the society that the settlers were making in this country. They were already just absorbing into, and they accepted them. There was no racist. He said they were good people. We put them on reservations and taught them to be non-productive.
Third world countries.
And that's where we're going nationally in this country. Socialism. If you want to see socialism at its best, go to a reservation and you'll see it. Yeah, I've had a lot of friends that are early American. In fact, and I may have told you this story, it was last year, I was called by the jail and there was a young man, he was Shoshone, in adult jail. His circumstance I'm not going to get into. I went to visit him and about 20 minutes into the conversation I said, stop. He said, I'm sorry, did I do something wrong? I said, no. The problem here is that you have no idea how smart you are. And he said, no, I'm not. I've been told I'm stupid all my life. So I said, no, you don't understand. People are my business. I sell an intangible. I sell insurance. And you're smart. You can be anything you want to be, but you have to have the right frame of mind. And I'm sorry that you wound up in jail. It wasn't his fault. I won't get into the story. It wasn't. It was premeditated. So I visited with him for about 6 months in jail and he got out. 2-3 months later, I swung into Burger King to pick up a double Whopper. I was either headed here or jail or something. And I ordered it, pulled up to the second window, out comes an arm. And I look and it's him. And I said, wow, you got a job at Burger King. He said, thank you for telling me I'm smart.
Wow.
He didn't know. And he said, I can be anything I want to be. And he's 23 years old. Yeah.
Success story.
So socialism isn't the key. Public education isn't necessarily the key. It's reading and seeing stuff, trusting but verifying. And that's what we need to do. Like the information you give when you're going door to door. Educating people, that empowers. And that's what we're here to do. Thank you.